afternoon and welcome to our workshop on test-taking strategies. Let me begin with a question. How many of you get some kind of anxiety before you're going to take a test? Okay, quite a few of you. All right, well, first of all, I'd like to tell you that you're not alone, okay? Many people get anxiety before they're going to take a test, just the way anybody might get anxiety before you do anything new, such as giving a speech, going to a new place, going on an interview. So that's something that will probably happen. What the good news is that it could be actually a little beneficial to have a little bit of anxiety, because what it does, it gives you that extra adrenaline that will help you perform better actually on your test. So it's a little bit energizing to have that little bit of anxiety. The bad news is if you have too much anxiety, then it could be debilitating. Okay, it could affect your performance on your work, and it could also cloud your thoughts, and it could also create some kind of a panic. So what you want to do is you want to learn strategies and tips on taking tests so that you reduce that anxiety. My name is Wendy Zini, and I'm a coach here at the Writing, Reading, and Speech Center here and at COD, and I'm going to do this workshop to teach you some of these strategies that can help you reduce that kind of anxiety when you're taking a test. So first of all, you want to be able to accept your nervousness, because you're going to be a little bit nervous before you take a test, simply because you are anticipating that there's going to be questions and you're not sure exactly what is going to be on them. So you might be a little bit nervous. Just accept that. Secondly, you probably have some negative thoughts. What if I didn't study the right thing? Or what if I don't have enough time to complete the test? Well, with the strategies and the tips you're going to learn today, you'll be able to change a lot of those negative thoughts to positive thoughts, because you'll use these strategies and you'll be able to turn that around and say, yeah, I know I studied the right thing, and I'm going to manage my time so that I will be able to finish my test. And you'll be thinking about each time you take a test about the progress that you have made. The main thing you want to do is prepare. If you prepare well, you'll reduce that anxiety quite a bit. So first thing you want to do is you want to think about what you're going to do the very first day you get your syllabus. When you get your syllabus, many times there are test dates right on the syllabus. So what you want to do is you want to mark those down on your calendar. If you use a hard copy, that's fine. If you do it on your phone, that's fine as well. You just want to mark down so you know what's coming up. You know when you're going to actually have those tests. When you do that, then you're going to start thinking about what is going to be covered on that particular test. When you look and see how many chapters or what's going to be covered, you're going to want to manage your time, and you're going to want to think about breaking things into chunks so that you might study for one chapter on these particular days at this particular time, and another chapter on another time and another date, and so forth, so that you can mark those down. So you're not waiting to the last minute, and you're preparing way ahead of time. Okay? You also want to make sure that when you're in class, you're taking good notes, and you're also taking notes on your textbook material. Now, if you don't know how to do that, we offer a workshop on that too, on taking notes for textbook material and in-class notes. You also want to be sure that you could ask your instructor about what is going to be on the test. Don't be shy about asking your instructor those questions. Is it going to be multiple choice? Is it going to be essay or short answer or a combination? Am I going to have the whole hour to complete the test, or just a portion of the hour? You want to know those things, and it's your right to ask the instructor those types of questions. The other thing you want to do is you want to periodically self-test. Now, what do I mean by self-test? It means when you're preparing and you already know what types of questions you're going to be having, you could create yourself a little bit of a test for yourself. If you know it's going to be essay, kind of anticipate the types of questions you might see on a test, and then ask yourself those questions and see if you could answer them. If you know it's going to be a lot of terms, you might make flashcards and then go over the flashcards to learn the terminology. So you can prepare ahead of time and then quiz yourself, see how much you know. All right, now, when you are going to take the test, the day of the test, you always want to get a good night's sleep the night before. A lot of people do cramming. Cramming is never a good idea. If you prepare all along, you won't have to cram. And what you technically should do is go to bed at a reasonable time and stop studying a couple hours before you go to bed, so you're kind of relaxed and you're not all anxious about it. The other thing is eating a good breakfast. Why should you eat a good breakfast? Primarily because it will, if you don't want to be taking a test when you're hungry, or you don't want your sugar level to drop while you're taking a test. So you always want to make sure that you've eaten something, and you should eat something healthy. All right, you want to get there early because you don't want to be in a rush when you get there and then kind of be looking for all of the utensils and things that you might need, and while the instructor is actually giving instructions. You want to sit down, get all the materials out that you need, if you're going to be needing any books, if you're going to be needing any pencils or pens or erasers. You want to have it all there in front of you so you are ready. You want to think positively and think about what you have studied. Think about all the time you spent on it. Take some deep breaths, okay, and then you'll be ready to start the test. Now, when you actually get the test, how many of you just start writing immediately the first question and start answering it? Well, that's good to know that most of you don't do that, because what you really need to do is you really need to read over the whole exam. You want to look at the whole exam and see what it's going to encompass. You want to read instructions very carefully. Why do you read instructions? Well, let's say, for example, there's 3 essay questions, but in the instructions, it might say just complete 2 of the essay questions. So you don't want to be spending your time on a question that you don't have to answer. You could be spending your time answering the questions that you need to answer. So always read the instructions very carefully. You want to look over the whole test because you want to see how much time you're going to spend on each part. Okay? Anybody have an idea why you might do that? Mm-hmm.
To make sure that you're not taking all of your time in one section, but that you're spacing it out so you can get all the different sets of questions done.
Right. Okay. Very good. As this gentleman pointed out, you want to make sure you have time to do everything. And you might want to note the point value. For example, there might be essay questions that are worth 70%, while your multiple choice is only worth 30. So where do you want to spend the bulk of your time? You want to spend the bulk of your time on the part that you're going to get the maximum or the most amount of points. So basically, you're going to have to think about that and say, manage your time. Figure out, well, I want to spend this amount of time on these questions. I want to spend this amount of time on this section. Okay. Then you want to answer all the questions that you know first. Now, sometimes where students get into trouble is they skip a question and then they forget to go back. So you always want to mark any question that you are going to come back to be sure that you don't forget about that question. And if you have a corresponding Scantron, you want to make sure that you mark it on that Scantron too, so that you're making sure that all of your questions match up to your Scantron. Breathe deeply again. If you find yourself getting tense, take some deep breaths, okay, and then you'll be ready to start again. All right, when you're taking a test, sometimes there are words that people need to be very cognizant of. They have to watch these certain words because that can make a big difference. words like, we call them absolutes. All, never, always, nothing. When you see those types of words, you have to think very carefully. How many things are all or always? How many things are absolutely never? So be very aware of those types of words. Words like all the above, none of the above. So if you see a multiple choice and there is one answer that is true while everything else is false, you can't put all the above. Even if there's just one, even though the majority of them might be fit with all the above. Okay, watch for words like not or except or least. A lot of times people forget about those words and then they're reading the question wrong. If you're reading the question wrong, you're not going to answer it correctly. If they are saying something like, all of these are true except one. Okay, so you're looking for the one false one, the one that is not true. So you have to really think about those words or those terms. They can get very confusing when you're taking a test. Double negatives. Anybody ever seen a question that has double negatives on it? It might be something like this. It's illogical to assume that Thomas Edison's fame was not due to his many practical inventions. Now there's two negative words in there. Can anybody point out what those two negative words are? Yes.
Illogical and not?
Yes. Okay, so the trick on that is to cross those out and make it positive. So illogical becomes logical, and you take away the not, and now it reads, is it logical to assume that Thomas Edison's fame was due to his many practical inventions? And that's how you're answering the question. So then you don't see all that confusion in there. Sometimes you will see that, and you have to be aware of what you need to do to fix it so that you can understand what they're really asking. Okay, multiple choice. A lot of people think multiple choice is easier, but sometimes it's not. When you are doing multiple choice, the best strategy to approach multiple choice questions is to just read the question, and then you want to think in your head, and if you've studied, what the answer would be. At this point, you're not even looking at any of the possibilities or any of the choices. You're just trying to think if you could answer that question. All right? Once you have done that, you want to read all of the choices. Now, sometimes you might see one and say, oh, this is it, and then you don't finish it. Well, that one might be okay, but there might be a better alternative or a better answer. So you want to make sure that you read all of them. And then you want to eliminate any that you know are wrong. So if you've got 4 possible choices, see if you can use process of elimination and get rid of 2 of them that you know definitely would not be the answers. Then at least you've got a 50-50 chance, right? Okay, so once you have chosen the answer that you think is the correct answer, try to validate it by looking back at your paragraph or wherever they're asking the question from. And then don't change it unless you are pretty much 100% sure that you made a mistake. A lot of students, what they do is they think, oh, I don't think that's wrong. They try to double guess themselves and they say, no, I'm going to pick the other one. And usually the one that you pick initially is the correct one. So stay with it unless you're 100% sure. You always want to look for those key words again. Make sure you go back to that question and you reread it to see if there are any words like not, except, or least in there so that you understood the question. All right. This is a multiple choice example. Anarchy. So if I were doing this, I would first think, do I know what anarchy is? If you were studying a history class or something, you might be able to figure that out right away and know what anarchy is, particularly if it was something that you discussed in class, particularly if it was something in your textbook. Okay, then you would look at all your choices and you read all the choices, and then certain ones you know are not going to be the answer. Okay, you know, for example, elected officials, that's what we have, which is a what? What kind of government do we have?
Democracy.
Democracy, okay? We have a democracy. So you would eliminate ones that you know would not be the correct answer, and then go for the one that is the correct answer. Anybody know what the answer is to this one? Anybody guess? Yes?
E?
Yes. None of the above. Because anarchy, okay, is the absence of any government. Okay? So if you knew that going in, then you would just still go through these to make sure there's not one in there, and then choose the correct one. Okay, true and false. When you're doing true and false, you want to read very carefully. Also, you're going to look for those absolutes in there, like never, always, and so forth. Okay? You want to think about some of these tricks, qualifiers, like frequently, sometimes, often. You want to look for ones that are often false, which might be the absolutes, like always, never, and all or none. Okay, here's an example. All birds can fly. How many of you think that's true? All right, good, it's false. Why? Do you know any birds that can't fly?
Ostrich.
Ostrich, okay, exactly. So you know that even if there is one bird, okay, all would not be the correct answer. So you would always have to think about, is there even one time that it could be false? Okay, solar energy is often used as an alternative energy source. Is that true or false?
True.
And why?
Because it's true. Solar energy is an alternative energy source.
Right. And the key words there is often used. If it said always, then that would make it
Our primary source.
yes, because there's other sources as well. So you can't say that it's always used. If it says often, the chance is that it's true. Okay, so this is a statement that's true because of the qualifier often in there. So those are the things that you want to look for in true and false. All right, matching. What you really try to do in matching is look at the column that has the most words in it and then try to match it to the other ones. Cross out the terms that you've used because most of the time you're only using them once, unless your instructor says you may use them more than once. And then you want to answer the questions that you know first. All right, so here's an example of something with matching. So when you're looking at this, you might not know, in your generation, some of these presidents. Some of you might not know that much about Jimmy Carter, or you might not know that much about Ronald Reagan, but you probably know something about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, okay? So I would look here first. Our first president is going to be?
George Washington.
Obviously, yes. Okay, and then resigned from the office of president. If you don't know that one, you might think about that. Was well known for his association with humanitarian causes. You might not know that. Was a movie star and a state governor before he was elected president. Anybody know which one that was? Ronald Reagan. Was assassinated while in office?
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln. So then you could go back and figure out who the other two might be. If you don't know, at least you've got only 50-50 there because you knew what the other ones were. Okay? All right, short answer. Short answer you have to be very prepared for. There's not any tricks in short answer. So you really have to know your material. And a lot of times in short answer, it might be questions that are asking you to name 3 things or about a particular subject. Focus on facts and keywords and answer, again, the questions that you're familiar with or that you know first. All right, example, name 2 types of diabetes. You always want to look and see if there's a number involved there so that you're not just naming 1. If they're asking for 2, you have to put down 2. Name 7 systems of the body. Same thing. If there's a number there, make sure that you're getting it for each one that they're asking for. Give 2 examples of foods that are processed. Again, they're looking for examples. The key number there is 2. So in short answer, a lot of times they're asking those types of questions. All right, essay. Essay questions, you have to read the question very carefully. I recommend reading the question several times because sometimes it can be confusing. You have to look for key words to see what they're asking. Are they asking you to compare and contrast? Are they asking you to analyze? Are they asking you to list? All of those words mean something different. So you want to make sure that you're aware of what they're asking you to do on the essay. All right, you want to budget your time for the essay and figure out how much time you have. And what I like to do when I'm doing an essay is I write like a little outline. If they allow you to bring scratch paper, write it on scratch paper, or you could even write it on the corner of your paper or your test, where you kind of have a little outline with all the key points that you want to put to answer those questions. That way, number one, you won't forget about them. You'll remember all the points that you're going to put down. And then you can think about how you want to organize those points so that it makes sense when you're actually writing it. So you're structuring it that way by making a little outline. And then when you start writing it, as you have had all your major points in your outline, then you're going to make sure that you're supporting it with valid examples or details or things that are necessary. You always want to reread your answer. You want to make sure that it makes sense, that you've covered everything that you want to cover in there, and that you have transitions, that it flows, and you've said everything that you pretty much want to say. That's why that little outline is good, because it helps you to remember all the things you want to put in there. Then you can start actually writing. Okay, you want to be familiar with the following. What is the purpose? Okay, why is this question being asked? What are the main ideas? Okay, because you want to have main ideas and then be able to back them up. You want to think about, are there steps for an argument? Should I be discussing these steps? Are there stages in a process? Do I need to explain what each part of the process is? So you want to anticipate these test questions. Okay, here's an example. Compare and contrast Abraham Lincoln and Robert E. Lee. Okay, so there, it's not just saying compare, but it's saying compare and contrast. What does that mean? What are you going to be doing? What does compare tell you? Anybody have any idea?
What's different about them?
That's contrast. Okay, so compare would be
Similar?
similar, exactly. So if they have both in there, then you know they want you to tell how they're similar and how they're different. Now sometimes if they just use the compare, they want you to do both. But if they have the word contrast, you know for sure they want you to do both. If they just have contrast, then they only want you to look at differences. Okay? Analyze 3 major reasons for the Civil War. Well, they don't want you to just list them. They want you to analyze them. So you have to explain, about each of these reasons. Not just say what the reasons were, but you have to say why these were the reasons and give more explanation than if you were just listing. Describe the process of photosynthesis. All right, in a process, there's always steps. So you're going to go, and those steps are usually in time order or chronological order. So you want to say, this is step 1, the first thing that happens, step 2, step 3, all the way through the whole process or procedure. All right, now at the end of the test, you want to leave time to recheck your answers. So try to fit that in when you're managing your time initially when you get your test. Try to finish so that you at least have a few minutes to go back over your test. That means you're looking to see if you skipped any questions that you have to go back to. That means you want to check perhaps certain questions that you were a little tentative about. Those types of things so that you can look on an essay if you've got all your points in that you wanted to say. So leave time, if possible, to check. Once again, don't change those answers in particularly a multiple choice unless you are absolutely sure. All right, so you want to go over the test completely and see where you made your mistakes once you got your test back. Okay, so a lot of teachers don't let you keep the test anymore. If they allow you to keep the test, use it as a tool or a study guide. And I'm going to give you a handout that is going to be a guide that you can use to do this and analyze your test. If you are not allowed to keep your test, see if you can do it when you first get it back, and if not, make an appointment with your professor to see if you can go into their office, look at the test, and analyze it more closely. A lot of times, a lot of material on those tests might come up again in a midterm or final. So you don't want to make the same mistakes twice or again. If you analyze it, you can see where your mistakes are, what things you got wrong, make corrections on it so you don't do the same thing the next time. So you want to correct all those answers, and again, go over any questions with a professor that you didn't understand so that you make sure that you understand it this time. Here's an example of that. The first test is the most difficult because you're not sure of your instructor's style or what they're going to do. Second tests or any subsequent tests after that are a little easier because then you have an idea of what your instructor is going to ask on another test. So if you're looking at this, you can see on this some study strategies. Look at yourself, analyze yourself. Did you read thoroughly enough? Did you not have correct information? Was the information that you studied incorrect? Did you have a mental block because of anxiety? Were you distracted during the test? Okay, did you manage your time properly? Did you spend too much time on one section and maybe didn't finish? Did you read the directions carefully? Maybe you didn't look at the directions carefully. So those are the types of things that you want to look at and you want to analyze so that hopefully on the next test you can do a lot better. I'm glad that you came today. I hope it was helpful for you and hope that you will come to some of our other workshops. We have them on time management, on taking notes in class, approaching a textbook. If you look on our site, you will see all kinds of workshops that they're all free and we're happy to have you. Thank you again for coming.